in a world that continues to push us into our own tribes, in a world that continues to say anyone who is different is to be hated, one man is saying, I want to stand up and say, how about we have a different conversation? It was sort of maybe taken for granted 50, 100 years ago that we would be civil when we had chats. It's not like that anymore. Andrew Marin specifically focuses on conservative Christians and those in the LGBTQ plus community and how do they have conversations, healthy conversations together. But it goes beyond that, even as we'll hear, to things like the Middle East and all sorts of things that he has. This is a conversation I had with Andrew Marin from the Marin Foundation. If you like this, please rate, review, share it with friends. We'd love to get the word out a bit more. Let's enjoy this conversation with Andrew Marin. Thank you so much for joining us on Towards Understanding.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, look, it's great to be able to get you in and have a chat a bit about your story. The story is quite fascinating in itself, and it sort of comes down now to a lot of the work that you're doing is discussing and making sure that the Christian community and the gay and lesbian community are actually communicating together. Before we sort of talk about what you're doing now, let's go back and hear a bit of your story, because it's quite personal for you for the reasons you're actually involved in this.
Yeah, sure. You know, what happened? So I'm from Chicago in Illinois, in America. Obviously, you can tell by my accent. And what happened was I grew up in a town outside of the city, and it was a very white, very upper middle class town, very conservative. Went to a large Pentecostal church there, and on top of that, I was the first kid from my high school to get a full athletic scholarship to play baseball in college, and at our university's highest level. So I had a very alpha male mentality, very sport mentality, very generally conservative ideology, politically, theologically, socially. And then the summer after my first year of university, my three best friends all came out to me in 3 consecutive months, and I'm an only child, and so for me, my best friends are my siblings. Was the same.
And how long have they been your best friends? Like, has it been your whole life, just the last couple of years?
Well, the oldest one, we had been best friends since I was 7 years old.
Wow.
So we hung out literally every day together for 12 years. Grew up on the same block, a couple houses down from each other, went to the same school, same church, played the same sports. I mean, we were literally each other's families. And so I had known them for a long time, and this was an integral part of my life. And so when they came out to me, in essence, they were saying they were the one thing that I had very intentionally singled out to that point forward, and I had no idea how to wrap my little conservative mind, and I don't say that in a negative way, but my mind around who they are. And so without knowing what to do and what to say and where to go, I just, and I'm very ashamed of what I did, but I stuck my tail between my legs like a scared little 5-year-old, and I just ran in the other direction. Because for me, everybody that I talked to, and I said, my 3 best friends just came out to me, whether it was people at my university, whether it was people at my church, both of them said, here's what you need to do. As long as you believe the correct stuff, who cares what you do? And that wasn't an answer for me. That was just aligning with a correct belief system. Now, the funny thing is, people at my university said, hey, as long as you believe it's not a sin, it's a happy, healthy way to live, they were born that way, then great. And then people at my church would say, listen, as long as you believe that it is a sin and they can change and they're going to hell if they don't, then whatever happens after that is okay. And so from an ethereal construct, it made a lot of sense. Yeah. From a practical way, in relation to my best friends, it made no sense at all.
Yeah. So here is this guy who is this real alpha male, and you've even played it down perhaps even a little bit here, that you said that you would talk against someone who was gay or whatever. You used pretty derogatory terms from my understanding a bit of your story as well. And so suddenly these 3 friends have all come out at the same time. Your first reaction is to run away. Mm-hmm. But that's not at all where you've stayed. In fact, there's been quite a different and impacting life change occurred for you. Mm-hmm. Take us a bit on that journey now of how we find the things you're involved in nowadays.
Sure. So what happened at that point? When I ran away from them, I felt like I needed to go through a time of study, because I felt like everyone was pulling me in a different direction. And so I started reading the Bible, and obviously there are the verses in there about homosexuality. I didn't really care about those verses. I cared about trying to figure out how the Lord needs me to today more sociologically look at Scripture in relation to how Jesus and what the commands were and how to live in relation to people. So one night I'm sitting in my dorm room, and this is my second year of university, and I really felt the Lord say, Andrew, instead of asking all of these outside people questions, why don't you ask yourself what it was like for your best friends to know that if they ever came out and told you who they are, that you would do exactly what you just did, which is stick your tail between your legs and run away. And I became their own worst self-fulfilling prophecy nightmare, and I couldn't live with that. So I ended up going back to them, and I reconnected all of us. And obviously it was my fault in the first place that we had not talked or hung out for months on end. And when I reconnected with them, I just felt that, number one, they showed me way more grace than I ever deserved at that moment. Because if the tables were reversed and they had spit on my story and my journey and left me for dead like I did for them, there's no way I'd be sitting at that table. And so it was just such a shock to my system that three of us who went to the same university decided to move into the gay neighborhood of Chicago. That gay neighborhood, or suburb as you guys would call it, it's called Boys Town. So to give you a little context of Boys Town, Boys Town is the only officially gay incorporated neighborhood in the United States of America. So in 1998, the mayor of the city of Chicago literally incorporated this 1 square mile radius as Boys Town, Chicago. We have our own postal code. We have our own city council member who's gay. There are 60 gay bars and clubs in this area, 34 specialty shops. Largest gay and lesbian center in the United States is in the middle of there. In fact, our street lights that line our street have the rainbow colors embedded in them, and they light up at night, and so that's what lights our street. Yeah. So as a pretty homophobic 19-year-old, I thought, well, my three best friends just came out to me. There's no better place for me to live than right in the middle of that place. And so we moved in, and that's really what started the journey, and I've been there now, still live there with my wife now, and we've been there about 12 years. And it started an experience for me. My goal back then was to figure out how to learn how to live and love at the same time, because I was acutely aware that I did not know how to do either one of those things.
Yeah. It's something that I think a lot of people who have a Christian faith would probably be, maybe even right now as they're listening, going through part of that struggle as well. I feel like this is what I've been told the whole time. I feel like I have to love people. I feel like perhaps I can't connect the two together. For you, that's a pretty big decision to move into that neighborhood. And it meant that you've been able to perhaps understand the best way to just love people no matter who they are and what they believe in. Take us through a bit more at the creation of the Marin Foundation. I know your book as well, Love as an Orientation. This is all part of what your journey is. And then we're going to ask a few questions and hear a few of your thoughts on some of these issues and topics. But take us through a bit of that too.
Yeah, so when we first moved in, actually it was the very first night that we lived in the neighborhood, and I'd never been to a bar in general. And so the three of us, myself and my two lesbian friends, thought, well, let's go to a gay bar. And so we went. And, I walk in and everyone's head just turned and is staring right at me. And I definitely stick out like a sore thumb. So to give you a little context again about Boys Town, according to the census in Chicago in 2010, 89% of the 90-ish thousand people that live there in Boys Town identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender. So I'm very one of the few minority straight people who live in this neighborhood. And so everybody's looking right at me. And this guy walks up to me and he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, You're not gay, are you? And I said, no, I'm not gay. So he thinks this is hilarious. And he turns to his friends and he goes, see, he's not gay. I told you, pay up. So they had a bet to see if I was gay or not. So he walks over and gets his money and he walks right back up to my face. And he says, then what are you doing here? And I freaked out. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And my best friends just came out to me and I'm super homophobic. And this is really weird for me. And I just start telling him my story. Well, the interesting thing is that so he brings his friends over because, again, he thinks this is hilarious. And so they sit there and they start asking me all these questions. And I was just very honest with them. I was honest where I was at in my journey, and I was honest of what was going on and my beliefs and all of this stuff. But I was also honest that I was on a journey and I needed to figure out something different. I needed to figure out what to do instead of just what to believe. So they... When they realized this, their faces all changed and they started telling me their stories. And here's the interesting part. There was one common theme between all 6 of their stories, and that was all of their pain was caused by people like me. White, straight, evangelical males at the top of the cultural hierarchy chain that got to dictate 3 very important cultural factors: who is normal, what is normal, and how normalcy is achieved. And we were able, and I was able to write off people very easily, not because I knew them, but because I could. And so this started a little discussion group, and within 2 years, there were over 100 people coming to this, 100 gay and lesbian people. I was the only straight person, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And next thing you know, we started running educational classes, and then we started involving the conservative and evangelical churches and political folks in Chicago, and we started these bridge building groups. And what I realized very early on is that building a bridge is about bringing opposing worldviews together to figure out what it means to facilitate a new medium of engagement. The expectation that somebody from either side is just going to drop what they believe and join your side, whatever your side is some type of idealistic best case scenario in people's heads, but that's not reality. The problem that we find is people live in their ideal scenario as reality, and it's not. And that's why everyone is so reactionary, because they're surprised when reality smacks them in the face. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how to function in reality, how to seek reconciliation, our definition being the constant pursuer of that which is disconnected. And that has to start from both ends.
I love the fact that one of the aims of the Marin Foundation is to actually get people in a room, and I can't remember the phrase you used exactly, but it's designed to be, uncomfortable for people.
Yeah.
That's the concept,
living in the tension.
That's it, living in the tension. I knew there was a phrase, and just skipped my mind for a second. Sorry about that. But that's the concept for you, isn't it? Whether it's a conservative Christian, a liberal Christian, someone from the gay and lesbian community, someone from another community as well, to deliberately put people together who otherwise wouldn't, and to see what comes out of that. I mean, and I'm guessing that you've had a fair few people not too happy about it, have a bit of a go at you at times, and that's probably putting it mildly. Is that fair too?
Yeah, no, that's definitely putting it mildly. So I appreciate that. And today it's like we call it, I'm not trying to speak for my organization. I call it. Andrew Marin calls it cowards behind keyboards, and there's just so many people today that can write whatever they want on the internet, not be held accountable for any of it. And once again, it's a cop-out. It's a scapegoat to actually having to do the hard work of living in the tension. So where that came from, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. was locked up in a jail in Birmingham, Alabama, and he wrote what we understand today as a letter from Birmingham. In that letter, he says some of the most profound stuff. He said, "I am not afraid of the word tension. I've earnestly opposed violent tension my whole life, but there's a type of constructive and nonviolent tension which produces growth." And I think the two keys to what he was saying, number one, constructive tension. Our culture knows not what constructive tension looks like anymore, because we all think it's tension, it's bad, or it's too political or too divisive, and it's something that we just need to solve and get out on the other end of. But what he was saying is that there's a type of constructive tension when you intentionally immerse yourself in over a significant amount of time. The growth is going to come 100% of the time. The difference is that the growth comes retrospectively after much time has been immersed in these places. And ultimately, that is, if I were to give one kind of high-level sentence overview, that is what we are all about, that we are all about bridge building, and we are all about bridge building through entering into these spaces of constructive tension for significant amount of times to see what type of growth can actually happen.
We're going to be back with the president and founder of the Marin Foundation as we continue talking about building bridges between communities that often don't see eye to eye, with Andrew Marin on the way next here on Towards Understanding.
Share your brand, your event, your message across 90 Christian radio stations and major cities in Australia and New Zealand by sponsoring Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton Bielan. More than 210,000 people tune into Towards Understanding each week, and with just one sponsorship, you'll reach this immense engaged audience. Find out more about this exciting and unique opportunity now on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.
Really interesting from the Marin Foundation point of view. There's, if you look to the website, you see 5 big questions that a lot of people get asked, and I love your take on how you answer these questions. The 5 of these: do you think that gays and lesbians are born that way? Do you think homosexuality is a sin? Can a LGBT person change? Do you think that someone can be gay and Christian? And are LGBT people going to hell? You've got a really interesting take from the Foundation's point of view of how you answer that. Could you share that?
What happens is that all 6 of those main questions that you just listed are close-ended yes or no questions. And in essence, what they're trying to do is elicit a one-word response that has no nuance, that has no ability to elongate the conversation, has no ability to elevate the conversation. It's actually the goal of these closed-ended questions is to end the conversation, because when people answer with a yes or no, what happens is three things. Someone says, I know who you are, what you believe, and the big one, how I should treat you based upon a preset of suppositions that I already know about you and your people with that one-word answer, wherever that one-word answer is coming from. And now I want to make clear that I'm not advocating that people don't have an understanding of absolute truth. That's fine. We have to understand that there are different understandings of people's, how they understand absolute truth to be. And so ultimately, what we're trying to do is elevate the conversation past these yes or no questions. So something that stuck out very poignantly for me, and this was after I was already living in Boys Town, and I read the Bible through from cover to cover every year. And one year, and I'd been in Boys Town for a few years at this point, I get to Matthew 11, and Jesus, John the Baptist's disciples go to Jesus, and they say, hey, John the Baptist is locked up in jail, and he wants to know, are you the one to come? And now I realize, wait a second, are you the one to come? That's a closed-ended yes or no answer. And Jesus knew a few things. Number one, he knew John the Baptist was his cousin.
Yep.
He knew John the Baptist was supposed to lead the way according to the Christian tradition. He knew that John the Baptist was not trying to trick him, trap him, pin him down, deceive him, none of that. He knew that he just needed to know the answer because he knew he was going to get beheaded. And so Jesus should have said, logically, if you would think about it, he would have said, well, of course, you go back and tell the John the Baptist, of course, I'm his cousin, he's the one to come, this all happened, he's fine. Yeah. But he didn't answer like that. Instead, what he said was, you go back and you tell him what you see and what you hear is sick or healed, dead or raised, poor or fed, he goes on. And I thought, man, that was interesting. I'd never picked up on that before. So what I did was, and there's a chart in my book, and so I counted every time that Jesus was asked a closed-ended yes or no question recorded in Scripture. And it was 25 times. And 3 times Jesus answered with a yes or no answer. And the interesting part is that those 3 times, he was already convicted. And all he had to do was go hang on a cross and die for our sins. So during his public ministry, not one single time did he ever blatantly yes or no to answer yes or no to a yes or no question. And so what I did in this chart was I charted all the questions, I charted how he responded, and then any themes that there were. Now, the interesting part is that he answered all 22 times the exact same fashion. It's in a 3-step way he answered. Number 1, he didn't answer yes or no. Number 2, he elevated his response to a kingdom principle that was applicable to anybody, any time, any place, any gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, job, race. It didn't matter. Orientation, applicable to everybody. And then what he did is he took that kingdom principle and he drove it home and made it socially relevant to, in essence, answer the question, just not in the way people deemed as the acceptable way to answer it. So the same thing is what we do with the Marin Foundation. We take those questions that are socially divisive, politically divisive, theologically divisive, and we try and elevate the conversation like Jesus did to really start to instill, as I said earlier, a new medium of engagement in what this means to think and talk and relate about such divisive issues.
Yeah. I suppose the questions that have happened a lot of the time in a lot of public debate, a lot of Christian debate as well, center on those few questions that we talked about. Is there a difference between, say, a public forum like the Marin Foundation, like open public discussion, to maybe not have a yes-no answer? Is there actually a need from a personal level to maybe have some of these questions answered in your own heart and mind, yes or no? Mm-hmm. Is that something that's valuable from your perspective? I mean, you can't speak for everybody, of course, but your take on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's important to have a belief system. At that point, whatever that is, more progressive, more conservative, you know who then the other and the opposite are. Mm-hmm. And you know then at that point who you need to build a bridge to. Yeah. So if you're more progressive on the topic, well, that's wonderful and that's great. But what are you doing with your progressive theology or ideology that is working to build together a better society? Yeah. And so that means what are you doing with conservative people who are working from a different worldview than yourself? What are you doing to make it better? It's like a great example is Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Malcolm X said, we as African Americans, we need to overthrow the white people and we need to place ourselves at the place of dominance. And Martin Luther King Jr. said that is the worst idea, because we need to work with white people, because even if we overthrow them, what we're doing is instilling the same system of oppression that they have instilled on us. Mm-hmm. And it's no different from Nelson Mandela or his wife. He wanted to work with the white South Africans, and his wife said, no, we need to overthrow them. And you can't have a united culture moving forward unless you are willing to do together. So that doesn't mean that you don't have a belief system. That just means we need to figure out a way to elevate and elongate conversations within the belief systems that we have so we can start working with the other and the opposite.
This concept of bridge building has taken you further than just Boys Town as well. It's taken you to the UN, it's taken you to the White House, I believe, pretty regularly each year as well. I reckon people will be pretty fascinated by it. How does that work? What's your involvement there? Could you share a bit through that?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. When I first started the Marin Foundation, I never had any vision of anything outside of the city of Chicago. But as I said earlier, I mean, when you love well and you instill peace and productivity into something that is so divisive, I guess people on the outside notice. And so, we've been brought in. I was able to speak at a inauguration event for President Obama back in 2009. In fact, it was the evening right before he got inaugurated. Wow. And Congress was there and everybody was there, and it was on our national television. And I mean, it was just really amazing. And then with the United Nations stuff for the last 2.5 years, I've been a special advisor to the UN. And so they have sent us around the world to give trainings and to different governments, to their own UN workers. And the stuff that we do at the UN in the advisory is less about the LGBT and faith issue. And it's more about saying, listen, your bridge building principles of civic engagement are between opposing worldviews are applicable, whether it's gay and lesbian folks in the church, whether it's warring tribes in Africa, whether it's Israelis and Palestinians, whether it's, democratic governments and, communism or whatever the situation is. Yeah. And so we've really been given a wonderful opportunity with that. Funny story, the very first time I ever did anything on behalf of the UN was in Vienna, Austria. And I was meeting with the Vice Chancellor of the European Union. And so this lady from the UN picks me up at the airport, little British lady. And she says, hey, thank you for coming. Do you know why you're here? And I was like, well, of course you invited me and you want me to talk about our principles. And this is how we academically put it, principles of bridging opposing worldviews, fighting to dictate cultural normalcy. And she goes, no, that's not why you're here. And I was like, oh no, because that's what I prepared for, Right. So I said, well, why am I here? And she says, you are not here because you have your PhD, because you don't, which I'm currently in the process of getting. Right. But she says, you're not here because you're a professor, because you're not. You're not here because you are an elected government official, because you're not. You're not here because you work for a government, because you don't. You're not here because you're an international celebrity, because no one knows who you are. And so she's just going on and on with this litany of things. I'm like, lady, okay, I get it. Like, I'm a nobody. I'm stupid. Like, why am I here? And one of the most profound things, she looks at me dead in the eye and she says, you are here because you are the only person in the world that we can find who is actually living out what they talk about regarding this topic. Wow. So she goes, you go and you talk about your experience. And, it's just amazing for us to see how loving well in a small little area over a significant amount of time, and seeing significant cultural and medium of engagement change in that area gets the notice of world leaders. And the next thing you know, the Marin Foundation and our tiny little budget has influenced 20, 30 times greater, literally being able to speak into world leaders' lives about these very needed topics and issues in a contemporary society that is pluralistic, that is postmodern. And, how do we do that? And that's what we're trying to answer.
As we sort of finish up, and we've taken a lot of your time, I thank you very much for it. What's the message that you would send? I think we probably summarised it in a way. We've talked a lot about that bridge building. I suppose going forward, it's fantastic that you're doing it, that those in your foundation are doing this as well. Presumably, you don't want it to stop there. You don't want it to just be your one foundation that does it, and you can talk to other people. It's actually to have these sorts of ideas around the world. Is that being successful? Is that actually happening? Yeah, no,
it completely is, and it's really it's really taken us by surprise, I guess, how much how tired people are of the back and forth, and how much when when we are here giving people an option, an opportunity to live differently and do things differently, how much people really, really take to that. So a few things. Our website is themarinfoundation.org. Marin is how you spell Marin. And there's lots of information on there. In fact, we have a free downloadable PDF on how to start bridge building groups in your own local area. And so it's really the best of what we've learned over the last decade put in this just really short downloadable PDF to actually start doing this work, whether it's LGBT folks and church folks, whether it's broader mainstream society and Aboriginals. I mean, it doesn't matter. It works with all of these different types of cultural disconnects. Obviously, there's the book, and then we also just released a 6-week DVD curriculum that takes people through how to build, grow, sustain your own bridge building group in your own local area. And that is also called Love is an Orientation. So those are just really easy ways to start getting involved and getting started. And hopefully this is the first of many times back here that we can really see this work solidified.
My guest on Towards Understanding, Andrew Marin, the president and founder of the Marin Foundation.